exciting, invigorating, captivating, extreme, mesmerizing. This is an ASUS X79 Sabertooth Motherboard, and 83.33335% of the words that I just said has no relevance to this motherboard or the video. Facebook told me that I have exactly 3 seconds to catch people's attention, so why not do so with attention-grabbing words, right? Well, if you made it this far into the video, congratulations. You have an attention span that is greater than that of a goldfish. It also said I only have 30 seconds to be able to catch people's interest, so I've wasted enough time. We're going to be taking a look at this X79 motherboard, see if there's any value left in it here in good old 2025, see what we can do with it and how it performs, maybe run some games. I'm going to start off by cleaning it though, that's for sure, restoring it to its brand new condition. It's not that bad looking, but it could always look better, and if we're going to be putting this in a computer, we want it to at least look good. So I'm going to start taking it apart. You can skip forward in the video if you don't want to watch me take the motherboard apart and clean things up. Taking the motherboard apart to clean it might seem a little bit extreme to some people, seeing as though it's not all that bad, and it doesn't seem to have smoker's dust built up all over it, but I'm going to do so anyways. For one, it's easier for me to clean some of these components right in my kitchen sink with soap and water, and for two, this motherboard's from 2011. It's pretty old, and the thermal pads are going to be rather dried up, so we're going to want to replace them with good thermal pads so they can do their job. Normally when I get a motherboard that is really bad, extremely dirty with smoker's dust pretty much glued to the motherboard, I would take the entire motherboard itself and also clean that in my kitchen sink with soap and water, which again might sound crazy to some people, but as long as you make sure the motherboard is completely dry before putting power through it, then the board should be completely fine. Sometimes I'll even give the motherboard an alcohol bath and then dry it off with my heat gun. So I'm sure it's only going to be the matter of time before I get a motherboard that's really bad, and I'll be able to record the cleaning process and make a video to show people how I do it. I use this soft bristle brush often to clean electronics, and I just like to use Dawn for soap. It's a degreaser and it works really well. So I'm going to get everything dried off, get the board put back together, that way we can carry on and see what this motherboard is all about. I was able to find 3 processors this motherboard should support amongst all the other computer hardware I have on hand here in my workroom. The first one is an Intel Xeon E5 1620 V2 4-core 8-thread processor with a 3.9 GHz boost clock and a 3.7 GHz base clock. Next is the Intel Core i7 3820 4-core 8-thread processor with a 3.8 GHz boost clock and a 3.6 GHz base clock. And last we have the Intel Core i7 4820K 4 cores 8-thread processor with a 3.9 GHz boost clock and a 3.7 GHz base clock. The codenames and generations of these LGA 2011 processors become a little bit confusing compared to the everyday LGA 1155 and LGA 1150 processors. You would think that the Intel Core i7 4820K would be a 4th generation Haswell processor, but it's actually a part of the Ivy Bridge processor family, which Ivy Bridge usually would represent 3rd generation Intel processors. The Intel Xeon processor is also an Ivy Bridge processor, and then the Intel Core i7 3820 is a Sandy Bridge processor, which is usually associated with 2nd generation Intel processors instead of 3rd generation. I have a few different kits of RAM here that I'm going to be trying out. The G-Skill kit, I know it works. It's 1866 megahertz. I'm not sure about the Corsair kit, but it's the same specs as the G-Skill. I have this mixed up kit of RAM here that I put together that's a few different brands. I want to see how it works. And then I have this kit of ECC RAM that I'm going to try out with the Xeon processor. For graphics, I have this NVIDIA GTX 980 graphics card. I really like the GTX 900 series graphics cards. It's one of my favorite generations, along with GTX 10 series, if that's what you call it, 10. Yeah, 10 series. Anyways, the GTX 980 is a really decent graphics card that you can get really cheap that has some pretty decent performance, and there's still some gaming life left in these cards. So I'm going to be pairing it with our X79 platform to see how well it does, see what kind of games we can play on it, and see if it's worth pairing with the X79 platform in general. Alright, well, moving on, we're going to get this test bench all set up, run some benchmarks, do some overclocking, run some games, see how well it's going to do in good old 2025, see what kind of performance we have here, and then after that we can really dig into the used market and see what kind of prices there are for these used X79 motherboards. See if it's even worth spending money on, or if it's going to be more worth it to move towards other budget hardware that might be of similar pricing, that could be newer and offer more performance or even the same performance. And then beyond that, after the comparison, we'll dig in and really see when it is worth building on the X79 platform. Cue the elevator music. Everything is hooked up and it posted into the BIOS just fine. All the hardware is working. We're going to move on to installing Windows, and then I'm going to overclock this hardware to the absolute max. I'm going to squeeze every little bit of performance I can out of the hardware with what cooling restrictions that I have, and without doing any kind of hard modifications to the hardware itself. My decision to use the Intel Core i7-3820 might have limited me a little bit, more so than what I would have been if I were to have used the Intel Core i7-4820K. Normally, the K series processors on the Intel side of things means that they are completely unlocked and will let you overclock it as much as you would like. And with the Intel Core i7-3820, I was a little bit limited, but I was able to give it an all-core overclock all the way up to 4.40 GHz, which is pretty far beyond the stock speeds, and it's giving us a pretty decent performance boost and not really overheating or getting too hot. So as you can see here on the graphics card side of things, I was able to achieve this absolutely massive overclock on this GTX 980. I was very happy with it, and I used the MSI Afterburner save profiles to save the highest overclock, and what I would do is I would step down the clock some and then save it as a different profile, and then step it down more and save, and more and save, and I do that in case I run into any stability issues later down the line. I could just easily switch between save profiles, but I actually didn't have to use any of the other profiles, and this overclock stuck the entire time. I think the clock speeds are actually closer to that of a GTX 1080 than the GTX 980 at this point, but, well, I mean, obviously the GTX 1080 has more CUDA cores, and it'll far outperform the GTX 980. I mean, it's actually kind of surprising how that works, because you have the GTX 980 and the GTX 980 Ti. The GTX 980 Ti actually has lower clock speeds than the GTX 980, but it has more CUDA cores, and because of that, it's able to get far better gaming performance. So yeah, clock speeds aren't everything. I guess that's something you learn time and time again when it comes to computer hardware. The games that I have downloaded and that we're going to be running on the system would be Fortnite, GTA 5, Call of Duty Warzone, and Rocket League. I think these are pretty popular games. A lot of people like to play. You'll be able to see what resolutions that I'm going to be playing at and what kind of frame rates that I'm going to be getting. Again, I apologize for the screen recording quality. It's I can't go back. I thought about going back and re-recording all of the gameplay, but it's a lot of work that I'm really not able to do right now. So if anybody doesn't want to watch the gameplay footage, after the gameplay we're going to really be jumping into the prices of X79 motherboards and processors, and that's when we're going to get into seeing if it's really worth building on the X79 platform, or if it's hardware that you should pretty much completely avoid or stay away from if you're going to be buying the hardware off the market. These are the settings that we're going to be starting off with. It's 1080p resolution, and it's kind of a mixture between high and medium settings when it comes to graphics quality wise. We're going to start here, see how well the performance is going to do, what kind of frame rates we're going to get, and then we're going to step it up graphics wise. We'll go into like the 1440p resolution and see if we can't max out the graphic quality settings while still getting some decent frame rates, or who knows, maybe it'll tank. We're going to have to see how well it does. Within the settings, we're running DirectX 12. There's always the option to use performance mode, and putting it in performance mode will boost your FPS up. So if you're struggling, if your card's struggling, put it in performance mode, you'll get more frames. This is being recorded at 60 frames a second, and again, the image quality is significantly better in person than what it is being recorded. I think my quality video settings in OBS got reset without me knowing it, and I accidentally recorded it with a low quality video setting. But anyways, the important things that you want to pay attention to is the settings I have set within the game, that it's running at 1920 1080p. The settings are kind of a mixture between medium and high, and the frame rates that we're achieving with these settings, and you can see that right within the game and the frame rate counter that I have in the bottom left corner of the screen. Seems like we're getting about 70 to 110 FPS average. It's dipping down into the upper 50s every now and then. The game is very playable at these settings. It looks great. I have no problem playing this game currently on this card, on the system, with the settings how they are. Here we go, 1440p with pretty much the same graphical settings, so let's see how it does. I forgot to select the frame counter in the next match. You can see the average frames we're getting here. The frames will also be shown in the next match. It's just their smaller numbers on the bottom of the left hand corner of the screen. Seems like we're getting about 57 to 70 frames a second on average. Every now and then it'll dip into the low 50s, but I get no stuttering issues. The game is running smooth, and I would have no problem playing this game how it is. It looks great, and it's running just fine. Rocket League can run on a potato with probes and wires sticking out of it. I'm not even sure why it's in this video. Don't judge me. Obviously it's running smooth. 1440p. Settings all maxed out. This is Grand Theft Auto 5, and it's running in 720p. The recording quality is so garbage that you probably won't even notice a difference between 720p and 1080. But, hey, getting some great FPS. Who would have thought?
You cannot be serious.
This gameplay is actually with the graphics card overclock disabled, but it's the only time through this entire video that it is disabled. 1920, 1080p, all high settings. Switching over to Grand Theft Auto Online took a little bit of a hit to the frames per second. We dropped down to about an average of 50 frames a second, but this game actually does very well with lower frames. It is very playable when you get maybe about 40 to 50 frames a second, and if you wanted to keep all the settings at very high, you can definitely play this game at an average of 50 frames per second. But we're going to go back and adjust some of the settings. We're going to switch things from very high to high instead and see if we can get it to run a little bit better, get a little bit more FPS out of it. Just changing the settings slightly, we ended up getting a boost of about 10 to 20 FPS in game. Honestly, I don't notice much of a difference in graphic quality wise. And even with the 20 extra FPS, it really doesn't feel much different from when we were getting 50 FPS, but at least it's over 60 now, so not too bad. Seems like Grand Theft Auto became more and more demanding as the years went on. I'm pretty sure I remember playing this game on a 9800 GT from Nvidia. 1440p does pretty good offline, just playing the story mode. Game runs smooth, not too bad. .1440p online, we dip back down into about the 50 frames a second range, but again, this game is very playable at 50 frames a second. It looks good and it runs smooth. I have no problem playing this game how it is. Adjusting some of the settings so it's a mixture of normal and high settings, we were able to get the frames back up into the 60 to 70 frames per second range. Moving on to Call of Duty Warzone, I have so much recorded content of this game that it's overwhelming me to try and video edit it down into a reasonable amount of time to show people how well this game plays on this platform. There's a ton of different settings, and I spent a lot of time adjusting settings and going back and playing rounds and adjusting settings. But I'm going to try to keep this to a native 1920 1080p resolution and then 1440p, and then after that we're going to play the game with some upscaling technology, software to see how well it will run and see if it's something that we're going to need in order to make this game playable on this platform. This is native 1440p with a mixture of normal to low settings.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
The 50 FPS is definitely playable here on 1440p. I would have no problem playing this game. I would have loads of fun doing so. Seems like we're getting high 62 and then drops down into the upper 40s, but I'd say mid 50s, not too bad. This is with upscaling software enabled. It's being upscaled to 1440p. I would love to hear you guys' opinion on it. Would you prefer upscaling? Can you notice a difference between native 1440p and upscaled 1440p, or even with 4K? Do you think it's going to be a big part of our future, or do you think graphics cards are going to get so powerful that 4K performance isn't going to be that big of a thing?
Taking fire!
This is native 1080p, so there's no upscaling software that's enabled. I have the graphic quality settings to about normal, which is between low and high.
Taking effective fire! Changing mag!
Gas is moving.
Got
Heads up. An enemy squad marks you as a bounty target.
"50 to 60 frames a second, and the game is actually really playable. I would not mind playing on this at all. In fact, I enjoyed playing on it. I only died because I suck at the game."
Be ready. You're
Okay, hang on a second. What are the chances of finding basically the exact same setup on eBay here? Just open eBay, search the motherboard, and voila. I swear to God, it's not my listing, okay? In fact, if it actually costs this much just for the motherboard, I mean, that's a little steep. I don't know. Oh man, I just smoked a little bit of that sticky icky I got from the Indians not that long ago. This little round green little nugget, 23% THC little guy. Now I'm looking at this video editing program like it's some kind of UFO spaceship dashboard. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I think I got myself together here. We're gonna go on the market and check out what some of these X79 motherboards are selling for and see if it's worth buying. I can tell you for sure that there's value left in this platform. If it can play the games we just played, any hardware that can play them games, there's value left in it. They're popular games. People buy computers to play. There's all kinds of other popular games too that you can test out and play, validate hardware with, and know whether there's value in something. As you can see here, these X79 Sabertooth motherboards are rather expensive though. I'm not sure if it's worth spending that much. Some of the other ones that come with RAM and a processor might be kind of a good deal. Find it for the right price. Oh wow, check this thing out. It's absolutely massive. That'd be cool to play around with though, huh? Run some dual Xeons. A little bit expensive, but... Sorry guys, I'm nerding out over here. I can't help it. Looking over some of these X79 motherboards here on eBay, the boards that are by themselves that are brand name really don't seem to be worth the price. As long as you can find an AM4 motherboard that is cheaper, and as long as there's all kinds of cheap Ryzen AM4 processors on eBay, it really makes no sense in getting something that might be older and costs more money, because you're going to get a lot of great performance. Even something like 9th gen Intel or 8th, 6th gen Intel, any one of them, all of them have cheap motherboards on the market, and there's cheap Intel processors that you can get, plenty of them. Some of these other ones that come with the motherboard, the RAM, and the processor, some of them are really good deals. I mean, you get an entire platform with loads of RAM and a processor for what, under $100? That's not that bad. You can't really complain. So when does it make sense to build on the X79 platform? Well, as you've seen before earlier in the video, there is all kinds of Xeon processors you can get real cheap. If you go on eBay, you can find these OEM motherboards that are from like HP or Dell, and you can get them dirt cheap as well. I've seen them sell for as low as $20, and I've even gotten one for $10 myself. Getting a $20 motherboard and pairing it with like a $10 processor, you can't go wrong. You can get really cheap ECC DDR3, and even for under $50 you can get a motherboard, a processor, and a whack ton of RAM. That is a really good time to build on the X79 platform. When it starts coming to some of these brand name motherboards that you would want to pair with like an i7 processor, the price kind of starts to not make sense. You'd be better off turning to an AM4 platform and getting a cheap Ryzen processor. DDR3, DDR4, I mean, is rather abundant. You can get it rather cheap. There's other scenarios one could be in as well. Like, you could be gifted an X79 motherboard, or say you found a computer cheap on your local market and you open it up and find there's an X79 motherboard in there with maybe no processor in it. If you're in one of those kind of situations, buying an i7 off the market with a little bit of DDR3 might not be a bad idea if you're looking to build a cheap budget computer. You're not going to spend that much money, and you're going to get somewhat decent performance. There's all kinds of games that you'll be able to play on it. Maybe you can build a computer for your kid, or maybe you're just in need of a budget build to play games on. Either way. Even if you get yourself like a free processor, or a friend gives you a processor, or you have one laying around, going on to find a motherboard, I would just keep an eye on the market and try to get the best deal you can, and only pair it with an X79 motherboard when it really makes sense to do so. I wouldn't just go out and buy a brand name X79 motherboard for well over $100 unless you're like some sort of enthusiast who really likes that platform. I mean, I'm willing to spend extra money on X58 hardware all the time because I'm a huge enthusiast of that platform. I really like building on it. I think there's all kinds of cool processors, so there's a lot of different scenarios, and it depends which one really fits you. Closing things out, you could feel free to follow my profile if you like my content. I plan on posting a lot more stuff in the future on the same kind of hardware or other content, other kinds of hardware, maybe just computers in general. So yeah, follow my profile. It would really help me out if you were to share my content as well. Maybe you have a friend into this kind of thing. I'm new to it. I've only made a few videos. I plan on making a lot more. It would mean a lot to me if you could share my content, maybe find something interesting in it. Go ahead and comment. We can conversate about it. Thank you. Come again.
Loading!